Greetings, friends. I'm once again joined by Dr. Jon Paulien of Loma University. And this is going to be an interesting and inspiring episode. It's going to be quite lengthy, I assume. But we will learn about Jon Paulien's own Dark Night of the Soul experience. Welcome.
Yes, I appreciate you raising the question because I'd never really thought too much about it. You know, I knew there were some times that weren't as good as others, but yeah, it was.
Some of us, like your students, we learn by hearing stories and examples. So I do believe that this will be beneficial for our listeners. So without further ado, please tell us how it all started, when you realized. You shared with me in a previous program that it was your wife actually that prompted you first to think about your own Dark Night of the Soul. You've been pastoring in New York, then you moved to Andrews to do your PhD, Andrews University in Michigan. And whilst you were a PhD student, you've been asked to teach as well. So that's where we left the story, the timeline of your story. So tell us what happened next.
All right. Well, the for me, the turning point year was 1987, and first of all, we had a child that was born in March of that year. And there were multiple challenges with the child. Um, there was is what they call a low tone, where the child had difficulty building up muscle.
Mm.
And so, for example, he didn't really sit up until he was more than a year old. Did not crawl until like 2.5 years old. Didn't stand or walk until about 4 years old, and so on. And there were other issues like that. And at about the 1 year old stage, the medical professional that had been working most directly and closely with him informed us that he would never walk or talk. And that was pretty devastating. Every parent, we're not the only ones that go through things like that. But every parent, longs to see their children to grow up and the fully human in every sense of the term, and to realize that there's some serious deficits that might never resolve themselves. That was pretty devastating. And I'm happy to report today that while there were developmental delays, that it seemed like everything was going half speed. Um, but now, in approaching middle age, our son has a good job. He walks and talks just fine. and But it was a long, slow process. And it's only fairly recently that we, saw the full growing up, etc. So that was clearly right from the start. There, we knew that it was going to be a long and hard series of experiences. The second thing that happened in 1987 was that my university, Andrews University, held a seminar on drug addiction and alcoholism. And I was kind of like, well, I'm not a drug addict or an alcoholic or anything. Do I really need this? But I thought, well, if they think it's important, I'll go, and maybe I can learn something that will help students, etc. And as the person presented, um, it just became clear as I looked at the whole timeline of addiction. I realized that both my wife and I were severely scarred by things that we had maybe taken for granted in the past, because as the person presented it, alcohol is an obvious addiction when it hits an individual, but there are secondary victims, and that's the
Mm.
people who are married to them, the people who are uh, parents to them, people who are children to them, etc. There's a whole what was called at the time codependency,
Mm.
and I realized that my wife was going through a lot of the consequences of alcohol in the family, addictions in the family growing up, etc., and that she was a secondary victim to that, and that I was a secondary victim, or maybe tertiary, if you want to use the term, in seeking to understand the dynamics in our relationship. So that was a watershed moment, and we immediately began reading books and attending small groups and things like that to try to wrestle with these things in our own lives. My wife began going to Al Anon, which is related to Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's specifically for people who have lived with
Mm.
people addicted to alcohol. And that was pretty powerful. And then also, my wife began to think it would be wise to go to a counselor, etc. And frankly, that didn't go well. Uh, Counseling is, I think, highly recommended for all of us. It's not maybe popular to say that, but I don't think there's any one of us that isn't broken by the reality of sin, not necessarily the sins that you did. When you're talking about codependency, these aren't things you did. These are things other people did to you or in your presence. And just for example, as a child growing up and seeing one parent take a bottle of orange juice, and back then they were glassed, and break a full bottle of orange juice over the head of your stepfather in your presence,
Mm.
and to see those kind of things day after day after day, it has a deep impact on you. And so we are all deeply affected by sin, even when we don't think we are, even though we think we're perfectly fine and normal. And I think most people would have thought of us as perfectly fine and normal people uh, during those times. So anyway, uh, we were,
Allow me to
yeah.
interrupt here and ask for a little clarification.
Mhm.
Uh, when you say that the counseling sessions didn't go well, um, you still recommend counseling
Yeah.
to other people, but there are cases when counseling doesn't work.
Well, and it can be for a variety of reasons, and not necessarily blaming a counselor, but there is a
Absolutely.
relationship. It's a relational thing, and some counselors may not be right for you. You see,
Yes.
and to not give up just because the first one or two tries didn't go particularly well. And another thing is some counselors have been trained more specifically in areas like physical abuse,
Mm.
sexual abuse, things like that. And if the counselor is not trained in the particular
Area.
context that
Mm.
you're bringing, or
Hmm.
you may not even know why you're struggling with things. The issues you bring are today.
Yes.
The cause to those issues might be 20 years ago or 50 years ago.
Yeah.
My wife has often remarked that at church potlucks, she'll sometimes, if I'm not there, if I'm off speaking somewhere or doing something that I couldn't be with her on that particular occasion, and she'd go sit at a table of, older women who are, single, etc., in their 70s, 80s, 90s. She'll sit at the table, and if she opens up her story, any part of it, instantly they'll all jump in and say, well, this happened to me when I was a child. This happened to me when I was a teenager, and so on. Um, what Satan has done is brutal, and he loves to ruin the image of God. anything he can do to ruin the image of God is absolutely at the center of his method of operation. And ruining children by physical, sexual, emotional abuse. It doesn't have to be some spectacular thing, but just the day by day, hour by hour put downs that some parents do with their children has a huge effect after year after year after year of that. And some in the mental health professions believe that that kind of a drip, drip, drip of abuse can be even harder to deal with than some spectacular thing like a rape or watching someone get murdered or things like
Yeah.
that. Those spectacular things, we know we got a problem.
Yes.
But that
It's
drip, drip,
obvious.
drip, we kind of think, well, that was small. That's way in the past. But it rewires the brain in ways that can be very, very difficult to overcome. Um, so not every counseling went well, but my wife and I continued reading books, continued talking about these things. She in particular spent a lot of time in small groups, etc. So that also happened in 1987. So
Oh
we're
no.
dealing with the birth, and then realizing that we've got other things going on that we did not see coming.
Mm,
Uh, but there was a third thing, 1987.
wow.
And
So
that is, I went, yeah, go ahead.
to wrap up a little bit this section and my interruption to you, counseling works, but oftentimes counseling can be replaced with traditional wisdom, with talking to people that been through the same, people that are more
Mm-hmm,
experienced. So never
mm-hmm.
underestimate the power of what a group of old ladies can do to your
Yeah,
heart and soul.
yeah. Well, in sharing their stories, they were actually touching base with it for the first time.
Wow.
And we're talking about things that happened to them 50, 60,
Mm,
75 years ago.
mm,
And they were only just saying, that happened to me too. I've always wondered why I, you know, react this way to certain things, and a self-awareness. There's three legs to the recovery stool, I think, and all three are often needed.
yes.
Number one is reading, learning about the whole dynamic, because my wife and I went through into our 30s
Mm.
without even a breath of thought that this might be something. We're not crazy people. We don't need to go to a counselor, kind of, and I think most people kind of feel that way. But when you hit the crisis moment, when you hit the dark night, that's when you begin to say, okay, I think I need to go a little deeper. So one thing would be reading, studying, attending classes, etc. A second would be small groups like Alcoholics Anonymous and similar ones for various issues that people might have. And then the third is that one-on-one with somebody who is competent, and preferably someone who believes in Christ, because if they don't, they can still help you on specific issues, but they won't understand the spiritual dynamic that's sometimes woven into all of that. There is such a thing. I know we don't want to hear it sometimes, but there is such a thing as spiritual abuse. It
Uh,
can happen in the home. It can happen from the pulpit. And I dread to think how many times I said things uncaringly, unfeelingly, just sort of talking the way people talk in the church.
yeah.
And some person in the congregation was deeply wounded, and I didn't even know it. So spiritual abuse can happen in a worship service as well. Like I said, Satan has the human race so twisted that we don't realize how deep the issues go very, very often. So the third
I
thing
had a
that happened,
conversation, if you permit me, please,
yeah,
with a mental health coach and a counselor who is a Christian, and we talked about the spiritual abuse, spiritual trauma. Maybe we can have a separate program to talk about that, because I've heard you saying she was not a pastor. You are. I'm a pastor, so at heart, at least.
Mhm.
So we need to find out where we draw the line. Yeah, where we draw the line, where we say, hey, this is something that I really need to tell my congregation, and I have to find the right words rather than always worrying what if somebody will get offended. I am struggling with this philosophy right now, but we'll come back to it another time. So 1987, these things happened in your life at the same time, like a perfect storm.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And let me just add, I think one more thing, uh, based on what you just brought up. Uh, and well, I just lost it, so that's all right. We'll continue.
It will come back.
They'll come back if it needs to. Oh yeah, I was just going to say I'm not done with this issue.
Yeah.
We go a lot deeper into it. But in terms of the pulpit and so forth, to be aware that things can happen from the words that you say. There's a balance. This is what I was thinking. There's a balance between compassion and authenticity.
Yes.
Compassion and authenticity. Authenticity basically says, be who you are and let the chips fall where they may.
Mm.
You know, I don't know if those are British chips or American chips, but that's the saying that we
Yes.
have. You know,
With
let the
no
chips
fish.
fall where they may. Some people are envisioning fish and other
Yes.
things now.
Yes.
But anyway, so what it is that compassion says don't do any harm. Authenticity says say whatever it is, be whoever you are, because that's who you authentically are. And so there's a tension between being authentic and being sensitive to what other people can handle. Jesus did that in John 16:12. He says, I have many things to tell you, but you can't
Exactly.
handle it now. You see? So Jesus faced that tension in his earthly experience. So authenticity was actually the next issue there in 1987. I was attending a conference at a major megachurch and a famous pastor who was the preacher there, but was sharing how it was that they were able to reach tens of thousands of secular Chicagoans,
Mm.
in a very secular city, how they were to reach them and build this huge congregation. And so, a lot of us wanted to go and learn what we could to minister more effectively in those areas. It wasn't what I expected, though. He spent the first hour talking about authenticity, talking about being who you are, being real.
I
And
believe I know what church you're talking about, but I don't want to be
yeah,
wrong.
yeah. No, it's called Willow Creek.
Willow Creek, yes.
And they've gone through a dark night of the soul as well more recently.
As a
And
church, as a
I don't know
congregation.
the details, and
Yeah,
I don't need to know.
yeah.
But I know that what was happening in 1987 was real.
Yes.
And I had noticed that in his preaching, most of his illustrations were from his own experience,
Mm.
and most of them were his failures, not his successes.
Wow.
And I reviewed my own preaching
Hmm.
and realized that whenever I shared stories of my own life, I always talked about my successes and never about my failures. And I realized that was a preacher now for 15 years.
Hmm.
And for 15 years, I had been painting an image of who I was
Hmm.
in the hope of pleasing people, in the hope of maybe reaching more people because they think I'm awesome, things like that. Trying to manage my image and my reputation to be a star pastor and things like that. And that was kind of devastating too, to realize that I thought I was doing the right thing all those years, and in some ways I was. I mean, there were people who were benefited by my ministry through those years, but come to realize that I was falling far short of true ministry. You can't play the tension between authenticity and compassion if you're never authentic. All right, then you're just compassionate, but you're compassionate for your own benefit. Well, if I'm compassionate here, people will think I'm a better pastor, or maybe more people will come to my church. Maybe they'll pay more tithes. You have all these mixed motives that can even afflict pastors. So, and people might say, well, you are a really rotten guy, in one sense that was true. But I can tell you that once I began opening up about these things, pastors by the score would come to see me. You know, there were 4 years in my seminary experience. This was after this time, but there were 4 years when the counselor went to get his PhD, and the dean asked me, of all people, to be the point person for any seminary student that needed counseling. I wasn't trained in that or anything, but just people knew that I was conversant on these issues and that they could talk about stuff in my presence and it wouldn't get around. So I began, trying to ask the Lord to help me be. And I wrote this up in a book called Knowing God in the Real World. There's a whole chapter on authenticity and how authenticity is very slippery, very hard to hang on to. And compassion is slippery too, because we can show compassion because in Christ we've become compassionate people. Or we can show compassion because we know that's what we're supposed to do, and that other people will look upon us with favor because we've been compassionate to them, and so on. So there's mixed motives in ministry I tremble at saying this here simply because some people may paint all pastors with it. All right, they're all pretty messed up, and that's true in the ultimate sense. But ministry is all about hurt people helping hurt people.
Yes.
And when we're aware of our own brokenness and we're honest about it, other people have the courage to try again. For those in the Seventh-day Adventist tradition that want some affirmation for this, go to the book Testimonies, Volume 4, pages 9 to 11. It's the most amazing passage where Ellen G. White, a great founder of the Seventh-day Adventist tradition, said that why does the Bible have such messed up people in it? And she talks about various Bible characters that were really a mess.
Yes.
We don't have to name many names that people would recognize. We'll just say David and Peter for starters, okay?
Absolutely.
People really, really messed up. Why are they there? And she says, it's because when we fall, when we realize that we are messed up, that we have courage to get up and try again. That
Yes.
the Bible is authentic. It doesn't tell these fake biographies of missionaries, who are absolute saints and always did great things. She says even the greatest missionaries sometimes had difficult marriages. Ellen White herself had a difficult marriage, it appears, from some of the letters she wrote to her best friend. But that's the human norm in a sinful world. We were all born broken. We all were raised broken. Our best efforts as parents fall short. And so we all need the grace of God, and that includes pastors. It includes conference presidents, whatever. All of us are broken to some degree. And the more that we know that, I have a saying when people say, I don't want to go to counseling because I don't want to know what's wrong with, I don't want to know. I don't. And I say, well, the more you hide, the less you heal.
And the worse is gonna get.
And it's going to get worse. Yeah. The
Yes.
more you hide, the worse. It's painful. If you read that book, Knowing God in the Real World, and if it's no longer available, which is possibly the case, I am putting more of my books on my website.
Right.
so people can read them free electronically.
Mm.
The website is thebattleofarmageddon.com.
I
Great
always put a
name.
link in the
Yeah,
description. Yes.
and we're putting new stuff, new chapters in my books out every week. And one of the books I plan to get out fairly soon is Knowing God in the Real World, where
Mm.
you have this material on authenticity and on the gospel. What is the gospel? And how does one really connect with Jesus? So, anyway, 1987, what a year. That just, and what I learned from about authenticity is that we were born with defense mechanisms. That's a psychological term. A defense mechanism is a natural human instinct to save your life.
Right.
Okay, if somebody, stands across the room and throws a rock toward your face, you don't have to process that moment.
No.
You will
Yes.
immediately
Yes.
defend yourself. The same dynamic is at work psychologically. When somebody wounds you, says something hurtful, there are defense mechanisms that kick in so that you can cope with that reality without going crazy.
Mm.
You see, you can block some things out. You can even forget they ever happened. Because if you go into that, now you have a problem, you see. So it's natural for people to not want to be authentic. And that became very clear to me in 1987. So, but the good news is that year is critical to everything I'm doing today. The dark night of the soul is painful.
Mm.
It's not what you wanted. It's not what you expected. Walking with God, you thought if you're walking with God, everything's going to be great.
Yeah.
The closer you come to God, the better things are going to get. The closer you come to God, the more people in the church will praise you and appreciate what you're doing. No, it's the opposite.
Hmm.
It's the opposite. The person who walks with God at an unusual level is totally incomprehensible to people at the earlier stages of faith. You see? So the fantasy that if we're really walking with God, the church will love us. No, uh, it's not the case. You talk to anybody at the higher levels of church experience, and they will tell you if they're in the mood to be open or if they trust you, they'll tell you how hard it is to be a leader in the church. So, yeah,
There's
everyone,
a say amongst pastors that pastoring is a very lonely profession,
absolutely, absolutely.
but it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah. But I will say this: Dark Night of the Soul isn't necessarily a single year,
Right.
isn't necessarily a moment in time. It can last a long time. And in my case, it lasted, I discern 14 years. So
Wow.
we're only starting. This is just crawling here, right at the beginning. We're not yet walking into the deep of it. So a great saving grace that happened in 1987 is my parents in New York City. They were retired and they were doing some wonderful things in New York City for the Lord. My father was a head elder of a church that grew from about 15 to 125 in the 1980s. Not because my parents are evangelists or Bible scholars. My father tried. He would do Bible studies and stuff, but there's not much would come of it. But their gift was hospitality. And they just circulate the church uh, and on Sabbath and invite people to lunch. Now,
Right.
they lived in New Jersey, about 10 miles away from where the church was in Manhattan, in the middle of New York City. But people cooped up in New York sometimes like to get out into a more country type place. And so people would come. They'd make the drive, after church on Sabbath. And I remember one time seeing 25 young people in the
Wow.
church, 25 young people at Sabbath dinner. And half of them would be Seventh day Adventists and half of them would not be. And one night, my folks says, oh, "We got some friends here from Thailand. There's three girls, you know." And so they came over, and they were not Christian, so that was a big step for me at the time. And they were also lesbian, gay,
Wow.
and that was a big step for me. And I'm kind of like, what's going on with my mom? You know, and it was a neighbor boy who was also gay, and he was over every day. You see, now
Wow.
I was in Michigan, so we didn't see this often. But when I was there, I'd see what is going on with my parents. You see, and that simply hospitality. You know, when my parents left New York in 1988, so many people in that church came up to me and said, "Your parents are the reason I'm in this church." So they were doing great,
Hmm.
but they saw what we were struggling with my son, and they said, "We've got to help. We've got to go." So they moved uh, nearby, about a half a mile away, about a kilometer away, and so they were over every day, and they were exercising my son. You know, take him out to playgrounds and because the stomach muscles were weak, he couldn't do the things that other kids
Hmm.
could do. And so we went to all the specialists and trying to get the best help, and it seemed like none of that was working. You know, there was
Hmm.
one case where counseling, training, whatever, it just wasn't working for my son. And there was a neurologist that checked him out, and it was like a 2 hour drive to get there. And I said, "Well, should we come back every year?" And he said, "No." He says, "There's nothing more I can do." But he says, "My prescription is 2 hours a day with his grandparents.
Wow.
That's my prescription." And my parents took it seriously and took him out every day. And of course, with the other kids too, we had three, and they were all fairly small at the time. And with my ministry, which often took me, to various parts of the world, that was a real sacrifice for my family, and I will always treasure that. So my parents would be at it every day, every day, every day. They were over,
We
and
always say that behind any great man, there is a great woman, but
mhm,
sometimes there are great parents as well. I'm fascinated by your parents' story, and by their openness and how open-minded a Christian should be. We can learn from their experience.
yeah,
Yeah, I
and
get
they
it
were not
very
that
well.
way in the that I remember, in the '60s and '70s. It's something that happened. You know, it was just they said, the Bible studies aren't working. Let's just open our home and invite people in. And so often, for example, LGBT people, very, very lonely. Very few people, their parents sometimes throw them out of the house,
Mm.
suicidal thoughts, all that kind of stuff. Just a home that feels like home.
Yeah.
They don't have it. And they go to a church hoping to find it and often get rejected in the church as well. It's part of the brokenness of sin. LGBT isn't a condition any worse than some of the conditions we as pastors have, with our background and childhood abuse and whatever. They desperately need home, need
Yes.
family, things like that. And that's the place that is, if they're ever going to, if you think they need to get better, it's going to happen in relationship. It's not going to happen through rejection. So my
Pa-
mom just realized,
punishment
yeah,
punishment is not a solution. Rejection is not a solution. Claiming that the Bible says so and therefore I'm going to treat you horribly. I don't think that is true. So once again, I'm fascinated. I'm at the same thinking, and I said it publicly from the pulpit that wherever I am, the church I am, everyone, including the LGBTQ plus community, are welcome.
mm-hmm,
So That's the most
Yeah.
I can do. I'm not going to sort out the problem. I'm not going to explain the why. And my mission or my calling is just to reflect the love of Jesus to them. Yeah.
How a church handles, um, ministry, how it handles membership, for example, how it, church officers, things like how a local church handles that in the case of LGBT, because it's a very challenging and difficult thing. That is sort of a local thing, and hopefully will be done with appropriate compassion, etc. But there are many areas of ministry that don't involve membership
Yes.
or
Yes.
officers or anything like that. There's so many ways that people can be involved. Anyway, so my parents just
Yes.
unconsciously, whatever, they took that up, and it was amazing ministry in many ways. So
And
they
then,
were,
then they started ministering to you and your
yeah,
family by moving to Berrien Springs
yeah.
from New Jersey.
Hmm.
Um, so I do believe that that is ministry in itself.
And so what my parents did when they came to Bering Springs is my father would circulate through the university looking for Germans, people from Germany, people who spoke the language, etc., and then they would invite them over every Sabbath. You see, they started like a German club, and of course, people who are foreigners going to school, etc., it can be challenging for them. They can feel very lonely too. So,
Mm.
so anyway, hospitality, wonderful ministry. If you're good at it, absolutely fantastic, and God will use you're opening your home. Use food. Jesus often was found eating with sinners.
Yes.
Okay. So whoever you label as a gross sinner, those are people who Jesus would have at his table. That is a challenge. So if you're good at hospitality, you can make a huge difference in the lives of people that would never darken the door of the church. People that, if they are in the church, nevertheless feel very isolated. So anyway, that's another topic for another day.
Yes.
But you see, the beauty of the dark night of the soul is as challenging as it is, you learn so much. It's life changing. And, it certainly was so for us. So, anyway, for 6 years, things moved along. Of our children starting to grow up, our son, little by little, maybe half speed, starting to do things that other children do. I think walking unsteadily was around 4. Notice his toddler years began at 4.
Mm.
So everything was kind of going half speed. Anyway, so in May of 1993, I
6 years
received a
later.
phone. Yeah, 6 years later, I received a phone call, and my mom was on the phone like 6 in the morning,
Mm.
and she says, Opa, that's German for grandpa.
Grandpa.
Opa's on the floor in the bathroom. He fell down, and I can't get him up.
Wow.
He's not conscious. I don't know what to do. So I called 911. That's the number we use in the States for emergency
Yes.
services. I got in my car and drove 100 kilometers an hour through streets, okay, to get to their house, which was about a kilometer away.
Mm.
And when I got there, a policeman was already there.
Mm.
And I said to him, "How did you get here so fast?" He says, "Well, I have a little red light that helps." So,
Yeah.
yeah. So the policeman is already there. My father was not responsive. He was taken to the hospital, and he did not die,
Mm.
but neither did he wake up.
Wow.
So he was essentially, quadriplegic, essentially non-communicative. I sensed that there were moments after that where he was at least aware of what was going on around him, but those moments were rare, and he was not able to speak, not even, blink twice if it's no, or he wants, no
Yeah.
response whatsoever. The only thing I knew that sometimes, maybe 10% of the time, there was some sort of brain functioning was there would be occasions where someone would do a deadpan joke, the kind of joke where nobody laughs, but just, you kind of get it. And he would burst out laughing before anybody else. And then I realized, okay, he was tracking at that moment. But anyway, so, my mom then uh, began to have to do that. And so the babysitting help and some of that was diminished tremendously. Um, my wife and I had extra responsibilities now, taking care of the father, helping with the father as well.
Mm.
There were late night visits to the emergency room. At
Mm.
least 8 times I got a call in the middle of the night saying, I don't think your father's going to make it to the morning. You better come now if you want to see him.
Wow.
8 times he recovered.
Mm.
So uh, he was not able to feed himself, not able to talk, not able to communicate. And my mom faithfully served him for years doing that. Also in 1993, somebody shared the idea that the best way to write a book is to, go off to a retreat somewhere by yourself. And I had a friend who was the president of a country club.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the houses were on the golf course, and you had membership in the golf course to live in those houses, etc. And he invited me to come write a book at his place. And it seemed like a great idea, and we had some friends that were going to help out, and there was a secretary who was very, very faithful of mine at the time, and she would often check in and help out and stuff. So we thought maybe we could do that. It was 2 to 3 weeks, something like that. And for me, it was a great experience. Um, I would get up at 2:30 in the morning. It was California, so that was 3 hour time difference. I just never shifted my time. I'd get up at 2:30
Mm.
and breakfast at 6:30 or so. So I'd get 4 hours of writing and research in, then breakfast, and then we'd go to the golf course and be the first people on the golf course. And it's a whole story in itself. He had some friends. He was a godly man, but he had some friends that were not, and the language was fascinating. But anyway, so we would go and play golf in the morning, and then the rest of the day I would continue writing, researching, and then go to bed at like 7 o'clock. And so
During those times, researching was not on Google.
no, no, it was not. And what I would have is the tools. I had along the tools, the concordances and
Yes.
Greek helps and all the rest of that. And I had basically the concept. I'd often taught this book, but needed to put it into writing, etc. So anyway, as you can imagine, it didn't go well for my wife.
Oh,
Okay. And it was kind of overwhelming because you had 3 kids, one of whom had special needs. So it's like having 5 kids.
yeah.
And my mom was not able to help that much anymore, and as I mentioned, there was a secretary that helped a little. But it was rough. It was overwhelming. And we had a good friend, lived a few hundred kilometers away, and they had a pastor who had a doctorate in counseling.
Hmm.
And and the friend said, "Oh, he's fantastic. He's trained in sexual abuse and all some of these difficult things, and he can almost read your mind. He'll stand up in front of a congregation and just look at a face he's never seen before and say that person was abused at the age of 12. I
Wow.
mean, for me, that's kind of like scary almost.
Absolutely. I
But
would be
but it
scared.
was real. But it was real. He had the training and the experience to know what was going on when even if they did not know
Hmm.
what was going on. And so my wife was saying, okay, he's got a couple of weeks. Now it's my turn. And well, it should. I mean, she was entirely in her rights to do that.
A
And
fair
so
resolve.
when I came back, she basically handed me the keys to the house and says, "It's all yours."
See you
uh,
later.
yeah. So all of the challenges with the kids and everything like that. So anyway, so she went off to there and began grappling, and one day she may tell her story.
Wow.
It's an incredible story, a painful story of things that happen. In some ways, her childhood was not that extraordinary, but there were just this little drip, drip, drip of little abuses
Yeah.
happened through the years, and we know now that that can be as scarring as the dramatic stuff of murder, rape, other things a child might have to be uh, observing or whatever. So
Is the
uh,
friend with the golf course still around?
no,
Because
no.
I was thinking maybe she can go and write her own book over there.
Hey, there you go. Okay. Right. Yeah. Well, it's in process, and we're
Yeah.
working together on it.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
it's coming. Whether it's ever published or not is another matter because there's many things sensitive uh, to people who might still be living. So
Yeah.
anyway, so she went off for that and left the kids with me, and so. Uh, this was a revelation. She found, like I said, there are many counselors where it doesn't do much good. She found a counselor that really, you know, really was able to go deep,
Right.
really was able to hit things in a powerful way, and it was transformative for her. But if you spend years with a lot of things, it isn't going to be an overnight or a 2 week thing. Recovery is a lifelong thing, and
Absolutely. And
we both are still in it. Yeah.
the scars will always be there.
Hmm.
The wound might have been healed, but the scars will always be there. Before you move to the next one, what book did you write at the golf course in California?
It was the commentary on John.
Commentary on John. Okay.
There was
So,
a series that Pacific Press came out with entitled the Bible Amplifier series,
right.
and they asked me to do Gospel of John, and then
Uh-huh.
eventually the Book of Revelation, which the series ended up canceled. I wasn't thrilled with every detail of how the series was envisioned.
All right.
And I didn't think it was going to work, but I was willing to try and get some of the material out there. So uh, occasion I want to put that book on the website as well, but that's a long-term promise as God
Right.
gives me strength. I've put more and more of these older books on the website so people can appreciate them and get
Yes.
the benefit from it. So anyway, the Revelation one never happened, and so I'm doing a commentary on Revelation now that's 2,000 plus pages, and spending a little time every day working on that. And by the grace of God, I'll have the time to finish that someday.
I
So there is
really
a 1.0 version of it. There is a complete commentary on the website, thebattleofarmageddon.com, but it's only 1.0. I'm working on 2.0 now, and there will be a 3.0, and then hopefully that's the end of it. Yeah.
I actually, I've been asked by some young people from my church to ask you where they can find more commentary on Revelation because they're following you. So
Mm-hmm.
now there you have it.
Thebattleofarmageddon.com. If you click on there's a button that says commentaries,
Uh-huh.
and if you click on that, or there's a drop down. There's the Facebook commentary and the Twitter commentary.
Right.
And the Twitter commentary is just sort of one line summaries
Mm-hmm.
of various parts of Revelation. So that's very brief, but that may be valuable. Just seeing 50 sentences that sort of summarize a chapter might actually be useful. So we did that. Twitter did a curve on me when I went from 140 to 280 characters. That totally changed what the tweets looked like. Of course, now they changed the name, but I'm not going
Yeah.
to go there.
No.
Anyway, so the Facebook commentary is the one that's complete and almost 2,000 double space pages. It's there for people to look at and gain from. But I want to do a lot more research and cover a lot of issues I didn't cover in 1.0, and so that's what I'm working on now.
I
So
am looking forward to reading it
yeah,
when it
yeah.
comes out.
So anyway, we have these three children, one with special needs. I had my continued job responsibilities as a professor, as a speaker, as a writer, deadlines, traveling, etc. And one of the bonuses of traveling is that my wife could sometimes go along and give her a break,
Mm,
and then others might step in. My mom would just say, "Bring the kids over to the house, and I'll manage them in between managing my husband." She was just an
right.
amazing person in that way that she was willing to step in. But a year later, we were in Australia for about a month, and we decided we'd never really done a honeymoon. We
Mm.
went to the church camp in the middle of winter. Nobody was there, and it wasn't, 5-star hotel or anything like that. So the thought was, let's go do something good. And we learned about a place called Heron Island, and it's in the Great Barrier Reef. It's in fact the only island on the reef itself. In other words, most of the Great Barrier Reef is under the ocean. And so you're experiencing it by snorkeling,
Hmm.
above the reef, etc. But there's only one island where you can walk out onto the reef
Wow.
when low tide, you see,
Mm.
and that's Heron Island. And so we went there for that experience. And the very last day, I remembered at low tide the previous day, we'd been walking out there, and it's fascinating. At low tide, you just see, you know, uh, a few centimeters of water and stuff. And you'll see they have these sea cucumbers and clams and just all kinds of creatures. They're just there. You're just walking among them. And
Wow.
that's a great experience. So one thing I noticed is that the reef got shallower as you went away from the beach, or as the deepest places along the beach, because that's how you keep a reef environment.
Right.
There's the barrier reef, and then you have So I thought the next morning it was high tide, and we went out there, and instead of being a few inches or centimeters deep, it was over my head,
Wow.
and I'm not a good swimmer.
No.
Okay, a lot of dumb things I did that day. Okay, not a great swimmer, but I went out anyway. I thought, okay, so the reef gets shallower as you go out. So let me go out a few hundred meters. And then if I get tired, I can, rest on the reef there,
Yeah.
keep my head above water and just rest a little bit and then come back.
Huh.
Well, I went about 400 meters and was getting tired. I'd had a little cricket accident in Australia, or was it New Zealand? I think it was New Zealand, a little while before, and so my legs were a bit banged up, and they were just cramping up, and I needed to rest, and I realized there was no reef right there. It
Wow.
was just sandy beach, and it was water over my head. And I started struggling. I started taking in water, and I just realized this is the end.
Mm.
It's all going to end right here. And miraculously, perhaps, into view suddenly came a rock. And the rock was about this high, I guess half a meter high, half a meter wide. And I got up on that rock, and I was just able to keep my head above water to rest a little bit. The problem was waves were coming in and washing me off the rock. So it was of limited value. And so I hollered to my wife, who was a good swimmer, and said, I'm in trouble here. You know, can you help me? And she swam over, and bless her heart, she's shorter than me, quite a few in weight less than me, you know, and she held me up on the rock
Wow.
and kept me steady, you know. Now remember, the water was over my head. And the short story is I was rescued. You know, they sent out a swimmer and a boat and stuff and
Mm.
came back in. And when I hit the beach, I was praising God. But my wife was traumatized for at least 6 months by watching her husband die. You know, it was just a horrific experience. What I learned at that moment was that every day is a gift.
Yes.
Uh, to make the most of every day, as many days as you have. And that was a gift for me, but again, was a challenge. Um, so, with all the things going on, my wife decided to renew the counseling, etc. And so she went back to the counseling for a number of years. And the counseling here was a little bit different. And what often happens is the counselor will take the side of the patient
Mm.
and embrace the story that they tell. And of course, all of our stories are self focused, all of our stories are distorted to some degree. But for a while there, I became the enemy. And I was the one that was the cause for all these things. And that was a very lonely period uh, because uh, because she was processing. And hey, if that gets you better, I'm all for it. Okay, if that's the way you have to go, you know, I'm a big boy, I can handle it. But it was a difficult period for me, and we're telling my story here. Okay, she's got her
Yes.
whole story, and
Yes.
it's a fabulous one that maybe one day we'll get out. But you know,
How did you deal?
I was afraid we were heading to the ultimate loneliness. And
How
the
did you
after
deal with the fact that you were the enemy?
well, it doesn't feel good, right? It's lonely, it's painful, so we're still in the dark night of the soul here.
Yes.
And there was a conference we went to, a recovery type conference, and we had a visit with a counselor, and the counselor basically said, you guys have to decide whether there's anything in this marriage worth saving. And that hit me like a brick. And I just said, well, okay, I'm committed to this marriage. If you need to go, you can go, but I'm committed to this, and you know, I'm staying. And a little while after that, my wife had a crisis, a health crisis, and I have no idea what the dynamic was. But she came out of that feeling like she really, really needed me,
Mm.
and it was the beginning of a healing in our marriage. And it just I know this may be uncomfortable for many people. I'm sure it's uncomfortable for my wife. But the reality is, we're real people, and we had to go through a lot of things together. And today, it just bonds us so much more that we've had to struggle to come to the place where we are today. And it's worth it. People might wonder, hey, you're 40, 50, 60, 70. Why bother with counseling? Hey, do you want to get better? Do you want to heal? Would you like the next years of your life to be better than the last ones? It's worth a try. And yes, it doesn't always go as well as you would like, but if you stay with it, if you take those three
Yeah.
parts of the stool, uh, it will get better.
At the end of the day, you want a better quality of life.
That's right. That's
Even if
right.
you are 60, 70, 80, it really doesn't matter. Um,
And for me, that was the end of the Dark Knight. That was the dark period, beginning with all those things in 1987 and then 2001, the restoration of our relationship in a beautiful way. That I would now that you made me think about it, that's where I would put the Dark Knight.
yeah. Um, Let me ask you this. You mentioned in the beginning the counseling. I recommend counseling, but it doesn't always work. Then this other counselor challenging you to think whether or not the marriage is worth fighting for. Um, all these interventions from third parties were more helpful or actually not? How
No,
would you find them?
on the whole, absolutely helpful. Yeah, we had just what we needed, just when we needed it. Maybe not when we thought we needed it, but when we really needed it, it was there at just the right time. And yeah, I mean, even the whole period of being the out,
Hmm,
being the problem rather than working toward a solution. Um, in the long run, that was something that probably had to be, and so I'm not. Dark Night of the Soul is not an easy road, and probably the vast majority of Christians absolutely walk away. They say, I don't need this, I don't want this, I'm out of here, and it's closed down. And you'll find that if you open up about things like that, there'll always be somebody in the audience that's kind of like, no, I don't want to hear this. I just want to stay the way I am because you're comfortable the way you are. This is who you are. So it's understandable. But when you realize you can become better, you can become something that you can be proud of. It's worth the
absolutely.
price. Absolutely. So
1987, 2001,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
you and your family went through these challenges, dark night of the soul for you. Um, am I right to assume that people around did not have a clue?
Well, it depends. The 4 years that I was counselor at the seminary was 1994, 1998. So
Mm,
it was in the midst of that.
mm,
And it was tremendously helpful to appreciate that when a student comes and opens up about horrific events in their life and stuff, that I don't condemn them, that I don't, oh no, I don't want to hear any more of this. I was able to listen to the hard stories because I had already faced them. And,
mm,
and, and probably 20% of the students in those 4 years came to see me one time or another and open up with some horrific stories. So ministry is not immune. In fact, the helping professions tend to attract people with difficult histories because you're looking for healing yourself. So I don't want people to just look at their minister and say what's going on here, but simply recognize we are all human beings. We are all people who have been hurt. We've all people who have been rejected at some point. We all have stories of rejection. The more we're open about it, the better a chance that we'll heal. The more we hide, the less we heal. So, coming out of all that, uh, then came something I never expected. You see, this is how the dark night of the soul prepares you to do things you wouldn't, already with the counseling and stuff, that I was able to make a difference in so many people's lives in something I wasn't trained in. And obviously, I knew enough to know when a student came to me and they needed really professional help, then I would send them to the university counseling service and to a person that I trusted there would be able to work with some of the deep stuff. So you know. So maybe one quick story on that.
Yes, please.
There was a young man who was on the softball team. That's sort of like baseball, cricket, a kind of a similar game, but for people who are not professional and they
Mm.
can enjoy the game without needing to be super skilled. And I was playing shortstop, so anybody knows what that is. He was playing second base. So we were close to each other in the field. It would be like in cricket, two people fielding, as part of that circle, fielding near each other. So got to watch him in action, and he would just fly into absolute rage. And so at one point I said, "Hey, come see me. Come see me." So he came to see me, and I told him about codependency, alcohol and its effects and stuff like that. And I says, "You have all the earmarks of somebody who grew up in an alcoholic home." And he said, "How did you know that?" And I said, "Well, what happened on the baseball field yesterday told me that." Okay. So he says, I don't really have a problem there. He says, "I can deal with it, so you know, don't worry about me." And basically blew it off. And I said, "Well, there's this counselor who can help you with that." "Nah, I'm good." He came back the next day and he said, "I went to South Bend last night and got smashed."
Wow.
That was his way of saying he drank alcohol to the point of almost unconsciousness.
Wow.
And of course, alcohol addiction is not, what do you call it, social drinking.
Hmm.
We have a glass of wine a day, so they're not alcoholics. Usually, okay, it can grow into that, but they're not usually alcoholics. Alcoholism is where you try to stop and you can be off for a month and then you go and absolutely lose it.
Hmm.
You see? So that was typical presentation of alcoholism. He didn't think he had a problem because most of the time he could control it. It was
Wow.
only when things went rough, when he triggered from some event in his life, like softball. And so he just came back and he said, "What was the name of that counselor? How do I get that?" Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that was going on those 4 years, and I couldn't have done that 10 years before. I would have been useless. I'd probably be condemning people who came to me with problems. "You're a pastor. You should know better than that." Not helpful. So anyway, so God was using this whole dark night of the soul to enable me to do things that I would not otherwise have been able to do. And one of those is in 2003. I came into contact with a group that was working with Muslims.
Hmm.
And there's nothing in my past that suggests that I could be effective with Muslims. I knew very little about the religion. But at that little conference, there was a man saying, "Hey, I hold meetings with Islamic groups and stuff like that, and I'd like you to come and teach them." And I'm kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. And he says, "No," he says, "I can see in the way that you handle scripture, in the way that you handle life." He says, "They will love you." And he says, "They will be blessed by you." Now, that I did not see coming.
Hmm.
And, you know, I went to a number of such meetings with scholars, you know, but when I would just teach Revelation the way that I taught it at the seminary, they got it quicker than my Christian seminary students. Christian seminary students would battle me almost, every moment because they had a different view of Revelation or whatever. But you took an exegetical view. What did Revelation mean? What did these symbols mean when it was first written? I mean, many Muslims are kind of like first century culture. Anyway, they dress the same way, they face life the same way, similar philosophy. They recognized the text and understood it almost immediately when I was teaching. My Christian students, they got a whole 2,000 years of tradition to get through before they can be open to the book. So uh, there was insight. Somebody saw in me something that would connect, and that proved to be the case. That would never have happened never have happened if I had not gone through this experience. To be appreciated in a totally different religious culture that I was not in any way trained for. So then in 2004, I was in the Biblical Research Committee of the General Conference, and in 2004, the subject of remnant came up. It's a favorite topic among Seventh-day Adventists. And the conversation there opened up fresh windows into what the remnant is all about. And I came to realize that Adventists had bridges to Muslims, bridges to Jews, bridges to Hindus that other Christians don't have. For example, for Islam, a real no-no is drinking alcohol or eating pork.
Yes.
Well, most Christians love both of those. And so instantly there's a barrier. Muslims not going to take you seriously. But because of who Seventh-day Adventists are, it's a Jesus religion that has no barriers for Muslims. And you can talk and share with Muslims, and immediately there's a bond. So and I realized that the remnant concept in the book of Revelation was broad enough to incorporate the world religions, not in the sense of every practice and stuff like that, but that there was something in each world religion that connected with the book of Revelation. And that was a discovery that began in 2004. And that the remnant concept actually was more than just, a remnant of Christianity, but that God's vision of the end time remnant was way bigger than that. And that just blew my mind. And I think people who have heard it, and on the website, you'll find an article called The Open Remnant. And there I share some of that, including the connections with Islam, Judaism, etc. So it opened up a broader field of ministry than I ever imagined. And my entire life prepared me for that. I couldn't have done it 30 years ago, etc.
Would you say that sorry, finish your thought.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of moving a little bit, but in 2005, my wife and I connected with a person with counseling training who had a program, a Christian-based program, that was relentless in dealing with your past issues. And we opened up, about every moment, even talking about, tell me all your past girlfriends, because they have an impact on who you are today, and sometimes can be a difficult impact, a compromise in some ways, So to get all those things out, to confess them one by one, to give them to God, invite his presence to heal, etc., it was incredible. So, I mean, even after, 20 years of off and on, there was more to learn. And it was just amazing that these are the best years, absolutely, of our marriage, where the anger was gone. Everybody gets angry out of proportion. If you drop a plate and it breaks and you go absolutely ballistic, it's probably more than just the plate that got you there. If somebody says, an innocuous phrase and suddenly you just go crazy with anger, anger out of proportion is one of the signals there's stuff not dealt with yet. So in dealing with all that stuff, the peace, the calm, the lack of anger and stuff, that's been such a blessing. So, best years of our marriage started in 2005. Yeah. You were going to say something.
I need to to call back my thoughts. I was going to ask you, as we conclude, I'm gonna leave this as a whole episode. I'm not gonna chop it in pieces. Next stage after the dark night of the soul is unconditional love, according to
Well,
the
eventually,
scholars.
yeah, eventually. Hmm.
Um, Tell me, please, a little bit about the unconditional love. But before you do that, I just wanted to affirm what you said about our Muslim brothers. I feel more at ease when I speak with Persians in particular, when I bring about the prophecy, Daniel and Revelation, when I mention their kings and leaders of the past, that is something that wins their heart. And it's a beginning of a deep conversation. And as you said, they get the point. But coming back to the unconditional love, tell us a little bit more about how this stage of faith, which is the last, yeah, in this study, in this conversation, looks like. How
Let
does
me
it
close
feel
with
like?
that, if you don't mind. Let me close with that. So
Yes,
I am planning to touch on that. But before that, I just want to share a couple more things. In
sure.
2006, I got a call to leave the seminary, a place where I was completely at home. I mean, everybody got what I was teaching. Students often felt it was transformative. I still run into pastors today that said that the teaching kind of, saved my life, changed my life, whatever, things like that. It was a good time. But I got this call to Loma Linda University, where I wouldn't be teaching pastors,
Hmm.
where I wouldn't be day to day handling some of the deep things that a New Testament scholar gets into. The New Testament part would kind of be over in a way. And that was a challenging move. But for my wife, it was a great move simply because she suffered from seasonal affective disorder, which means when winter comes and it's
Hmm.
cold, gray, and Berrien Springs is lake effect region. If you're familiar with Buffalo, New York,
Yes,
uh, the rest of the state may be clear and a meter of snow falls in this one little spot. Well, Berrien Springs is like that. It's a lake effect zone, and Chicago can be sunny, 100 kilometers away, and we have a meter of snow in Berrien Springs. So it's gray and relentlessly gray, maybe a little bit like parts of Britain. It's relentlessly gray. It's cold. It's humid. Just all the things that trigger seasonal affective disorder. So moving to a place that was sunny and warm was really something we were tracking. So this call to Loma Linda, it meant a complete change in my ministry. But God opened the door in dramatic fashion, and I will, leave the details of that. But there was no question God was calling us to go.
hmm.
I'm not a natural administrator. They wanted me to be a vice president and a dean, and these are not things that I certainly couldn't have handled it before 2005. You know, so God, everything in life prepares you for where God wants to take you next. And there's always been two sides to Adventism. Hadn't really thought about that much until 2006. But the one side of Adventism is the apocalyptic side, dealing with Bible prophecy, looking at other religions and saying, well, are they going to be a problem at the end of time? And looking for what's wrong with other people. And that's an important piece of who we are, recognizing that the end time is coming and it is a message that needs to go out for the end time. And to be careful about the world because the world will one day
Hmm.
try to crush you, you see. And all of that I get. Okay. I'm not going against any of that. I'm just saying that is a face of Adventism. But there's another face of Adventism, and that's the healing side. And that's in some ways almost the opposite. The healing side looks for what's positive in the world. The healing side goes out to heal rather than to critique. A tension between those two is who we are.
Hmm.
But I had never been involved that much in the healing side of Adventism and probably couldn't have been effective there before 2005. You see, so all of that was necessary to open the door to Loma Linda. And I ended up being appointed director of the Center for Understanding World Religions. And I have to tell you, I'm not competent to do that. Okay. Uh, I was asked to do that simply because people had the sense that I would be able to connect with people outside the Christian context, relate to them, etc. Could not have done that before. But God has blessed and developed wonderful relationships with Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, Sikh,
Hmm.
Jain,
Hmm.
uh, you know, there's many world religions out there that we know very little about. But if the gospel's supposed to go to the world, then we need to engage with people very different from ourselves. And as I mentioned, I learned that Adventism has, thanks to the book of Revelation, has something in it for every one of these religions. There's a connecting point. You got to start with a point of contact. We have points of contact with the other religions that other Christians don't have. And that if the call is to go to the world and prepare the world for the second coming, should we not go to the Persians, as you say, that have a
Yes,
strong eschatology and will
absolutely.
often say to me, we believe everything you believe about the end of the world.
Hmm?
It's just, it makes so much more sense when you say it. You see, so God has prepared through the book of Revelation a people to connect with every major religion and people group in the world, and that's a gift that we maybe haven't made use of as much as we could have. So to wrap it up a little bit,
Before
yeah.
that, if you permit me, please,
Mhm.
the book of Revelation is the best evangelistic book that was given to the Adventist church.
It is. It certainly has been part of our apocalyptic tradition. What I'm saying is, thanks to Loma Linda, I've learned that the healing part of our tradition will also be critical.
Yes,
Everyone today would agree that I think that one of the greatest needs of the world today is healing between the religions because so many wars have a religious basis for them. We see that
absolutely,
in the
yes.
world right now, you see. And to bring people together and to find points of contact and to find healing, a healing that is grounded in faith. That is a mission that I believe God has called Adventists to, and I believe it's grounded in the Book of Revelation, because as I show in that presentation, that the remnant of Revelation contains elements that are part of the core values of all the great world religions. And one of these days, maybe I'll do a presentation on Adventism and the world religions. Maybe next year, okay, in which I'll articulate why Adventists would care to have a center for understanding world religions. Aren't we supposed to just preach to everybody? No, before people are willing to listen, they often need to know you're listening and
Yes.
that you understand to know who they are. So it's sort of foundational. But as I reflect on my dark night of the soul and my uh, personal history, I, I come back to the stages of faith, just as you were suggesting we do.
Mhm.
That the stages of faith are learning, growing, and it's something we will continue to do, I think, even in the millennium. And that would be a whole nother story. But in the millennium, I think we will be learning and growing. We will not be wiped out by sin anymore, but we still have the traumas, the memories. God isn't going to wipe the memory blank. There's going to be people there that will have a dark memory in our past.
Hmm.
Imagine a Jew from Auschwitz meeting a Nazi concentration camp guard.
God.
They're going to have some stuff to work through. It's not going to be easy. So I think the millennium is there because we will need to continue learning and growing along the stages. People will die in stage one. Well, if they need to get to stage six, it's going to take time. It's going to be a process. I do believe that that's kind of the thing we'll be doing in the millennium. learning and growing. And by the way, someone might say, well, there won't be any Nazi concentration camp guards there.
I
I
was
would
going to say that, but I don't believe so.
I would beg to differ. And let me
Yes,
tell you something. We were in Auschwitz 2 months ago,
yes.
and we were standing outside the ovens
Hmm.
where the people who had been gassed were cremated, etc. And I asked the guide the question, why would anybody choose to be a concentration camp guard? Why?
They had no
It's
choice.
insane. And she said, it's true. They had a choice. The other choice was to go to the Eastern Front, where being maimed or killed was almost 100% guarantee. How many of us, faced with that choice, wouldn't choose the concentration camp? And maybe even convince ourselves that we could maybe do some good there somehow, maybe encourage people, maybe stop some of the violence, things like that. I mean, human beings are complex, and that helped me to see that even concentration camp guards, they may become hardened into devils, and most of them were, but it wasn't 100%. And if an amazing film is called The Pianist,
Yes, you mentioned in one of the previous presentations.
yeah, an amazing film where the man who was destroying the Jewish quarter showed great compassion to a single Jew,
Yes.
hid that Jew, helped him to survive. And
Mhm.
you kind of ask, how is this possible?
Mhm.
And realize that we're all conflicted human beings. There, but for the grace of God, go I. So learning, growing, etc., will help us become our best selves, and that's important. For Seventh Day Adventists, let me just point out some parallels with Ellen White's own experience. One of our revered founders and a person that we believe God spoke to in a way he doesn't speak to most of us. There's abundant evidence of dark nights in her experience. She actually had a very depressive personality. Read early writings, and you see a lot of evidence for that. She was stoned at the age of 9, which is very emotionally traumatic. I mean, she was basically an invalid for many years after that. She had a very dark picture of God in the early years. Read early writings uh, that Jesus, was very disapproving of her for being depressed and things like that. And that a lot of people feel that way, but it's not the picture of God that I think a right understanding of Scripture, and that she came to a much different picture of God in her later years as well. God led her on a journey to a more positive picture of God, a journey, I think we all know that, to a more Jesus centered, more gospel oriented Adventist faith. She herself said she learned a lot of things in 1888 when
Mhm.
she heard Waggoner and Jones. So even though a person could be inspired by God, they're not inspired in everything. And God allows them to learn some things. I mean, there's evidence that the book of Revelation is visionary, but that also John did some research, making very careful allusions to the Old Testament through the book. Sort of a combination of the two. So inspiration doesn't shut down the human side, but actually inspires that person to dig even deeper and harder. So she grew in her understanding of God and of the gospel. God led her on a journey, and she led the church on that same journey. So to some degree, her death froze that journey for the church, because I think sometimes we just assume that whatever she said 150 years ago is absolutely in every detail the only thing to cling to today. And if God had given her another 100 years, she would have continued growing, continued opening up new facets. And she herself says, through eternity, we'll be pondering the cross and opening up new facets. Amazing. kind of insight. So sticking with the old landmarks can be a good thing, but it could also get in the way of learning and growing. And so the dark night of the soul keeps us learning and growing. And if we're one of those Christians who has rejected the dark night and just says, let me just muddle along the way I was, I'm comfortable with that. Um, you're not doing the thing that you need to do in eternity to keep learning, keep growing, keep becoming less and less prideful, more and more authentic. That's hard work. It's hard work today, and it might be hard work, as I said, in the millennium when you have certain people coming together that you didn't expect to be there. That's going to be challenging. So my journey tells me that learning and growing is our mission. I thought I had it all together in the 1970s already. I was going to be the best pastor anybody could possibly be. I knew nothing compared to today, and I imagine halfway through the millennium, I'll be amazed at how little I know right now. You see, but that's part of the journey. It'll continue, and I don't want to wait for the millennium.
Mhm.
I want to. I want to change without a dark night. Okay, I think the dark night helps us to be willing to change because we realize we have to. But I say, Lord, change me regardless. Yeah, no dark nights needed. I just want to be open. I don't want you to have to wait to tell me what I can't handle now. I want to be willing to accept God's correction. And if necessary, more dark nights to keep on growing. So we could conclude then. You wanted to talk about stage 6, which is the unconditional love stage. I seriously doubt that anybody in this life really fully achieves stage 6.
Mm.
Okay, that's aspirational. I think we taste it from time to time. There are moments when we're flooded with love, and then there are other days when triggers come in, and we suddenly find a little bit of the anger coming back, etc. We live in a messed up world, and we're messed up, and so there are limits to the growth that we can achieve here. But I want to grow as much as possible. And what many people have discovered, you get into stage 5 and 6, and you become almost a pariah in your own church because people just don't get it. Scott Peck, the famous psychiatrist who was converted to be a Christian by his patients
Mm.
who were suffering from demonic manifestation. He didn't believe in supernatural, but he says, I saw evil so great that I realized that this is more than human beings could achieve. There is a personal evil out there. There is a Satan out there that twists people to the point where they do things that no sane human being could do. And so he became converted to realize, yes, this is a real kind of thing. And Scott Peck said about the stages of faith, if you're one step ahead of the people you're ministering to, they will admire you. They will adore you. They will want to follow you anywhere. If you're 2 steps ahead, they'll be perplexed by you. They'll be confused. It doesn't fit with their concept of religion. If you're 3 steps ahead, they'll want to kill you. And he said that's what happened to Jesus. He
Mm.
was so out of step with the religion of his time that the best practitioners of God's faith were willing to kill Jesus because of his unconditional love. So you see, the problem is if you love unconditionally, that means you will love my enemy.
Yes.
And I can't tolerate that. You know, I want you to love me, but you can't love him or her.
Mm.
If you do, I'm your enemy, you
Yes.
see. So the person who loves everybody will end up being challenged by pretty much everybody because that is a very challenging concept. So God probably doesn't afflict us with too much of stage 6 in this life because he wants us to survive. So how do you manage? Let's say you reach stage 4, 5, or 6, or at least taste some of those. How do you manage dealing with people in 1, 2, and 3 that are so easily confused and put off? And to me, the answer is mentoring. If one stage before is a stage that they can accept and receive, go back to that stage and meet them there. Meet them where they are. That's a good gospel principle. Meet people where they are.
Mhm.
Don't expect them to jump from stage 2 to stage 6 just because they met you one day. It's not going to happen. But if you can take them one step closer to stage 3, then you've accomplished something. So again, there's the authenticity versus compassion. Authenticity means if you've reached stage 5, living there, that's who you are. Compassion says most people can't handle that. Speak to them where they are. Help them to take the next step in their experience, and that is your mission. So if there are any out there that feel like a fish out of water in church, that feel like nobody understands them, that they're constantly rejected because they're walking with God in the church, just know that that's normal. It's actually a sign, probably, that God is with you. Persecution was considered the natural experience of the early church.
Mm.
And a lot of persecution isn't killing people or maiming them physically. It can simply be snide remarks, uh, preventing a person from getting a job that they might like, or an office in the church that they might like, and say, I'm going to make this person suffer because of what they did to me, simply being who God made them to be. So if you find yourself feeling completely misunderstood and fish out of water, that's normal. It's a normal part of life experience walking with God. And the way to cope with that in a community is recognize where other people are and meeting them there. Don't, as Ellen White put it, don't throw the most objectionable parts of your faith in their face on day one. People have to grow. They have to walk the path. Look at my path. What did I tell you here? 40, 50 years? Uh, 40 years almost since the beginning of the
Yes.
Dark Night. Um, Other people have to follow a path too. And
Hmm.
if I approach them as if they could jump from 1984 to today in a moment, that's just not realistic.
No.
So I need to go back to my own 1984, my own 1987, meet people there and share what I've learned for people at that point. And then we can connect with people. We can make a difference, even though we may know ourselves that that's only the beginning of the journey. We meet them there for their sake. It's a selfless thing to do. It's a compassionate thing to do. If you blurt out everything that you know, oh, that's being authentic, but it may do more harm than good. It may steel people against the gospel when it actually comes to them. So
Yes.
anyway, did I miss anything you wanted me to conclude with?
No, 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 no. I'm just fascinated, and I'm thinking, I'm trying to reflect on my own life. Just a couple of things before we wrap up here. Um, Stage 6, unconditional love, is not a destination, it's a journey in itself.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I
Yeah.
understand from what you've said.
Mm-hmm.
So be willing to embark on this journey. The other thing is that I've learned myself, when you approach someone that is at a lower stage in their faith, doing it with unconditional love, uh, against all risks, so to speak. Approaching someone with unconditional love will bear fruits. We don't
And
have,
unconditional love for that person will not get you in trouble.
yes,
It's
for that,
it's when they come
exactly.
to realize you're treating everybody else the same way. That's when it can become a problem. But in ministering to people one on one, yeah,
Yeah.
and to learn maybe even in our preaching to preach in a way that the people who are at the earlier stages will get enough to be blessed by it, but drop a few seeds for those who need it at other stages. And often people at the earlier stages won't even pick up on it. So God lets people grasp something at the moment that they're ready to grasp it.
That's why it's important to know your audience, to have a relationship with those people that we are preaching to. Well,
Yeah.
Dr. Paulien, thank you so much. I was in meetings and interviews where I was told if I can do the shoe shine. There's a prayer meeting happening in the morning, and I often go there to speak, and they say, "Give us the shoe shine." The conclusion in the Twitter conclusion of this
Mhm.
of this a fascinating story that you shared with us. I would assume this is a premiere
Mhm.
in which you talk about your own journey of faith. How would you summarize everything for Twitter or X, whatever that is?
Yeah, if you want a Twitter type thing, it's basically God has called us to a lifelong journey of learning and growing.
And the
That would be
journey
it.
is all that matters.
And the journey will not be easy. We can add that clause to the sentence. Yeah, the journey will not be easy, but it'll be worth it.
Worth taking it. Yes.
Hey, I like that. I never put that quite that way. So our mission is lifelong learning and growing. It won't be easy, but it'll be worth it. There you go. There's your tweet.
If you do it, if you post it on Twitter, I'll share it myself.
Mhm.
Well, Dr. Paulien, I just want to say thank you for your time, waking up again early morning to have this conversation. I hope and pray that those that are listening to us will take something for their own journey, will learn something, will find it useful, and their own journey will become easier. Because as of myself, I had no idea about what you've been through in your life, and I do have mentors and friends who have been through similar situations like yours, which I have not, and that's always a reminder for me that no, I'm not the most persecuted. I'm not the most tried person. I'm not the most attacked of the evil one. There are people around us that have been through worse. But as you said, I'm happy. I want to take the journey and reach the destination. And in that millennium, I still want to learn from you, also
So
from Jesus.
one more thing, uh,
Yes.
feeding off what you were saying. Um, I talked about going back to an earlier stage to minister to people.
Hmm.
You can go back for two reasons. And one reason is you don't want to face the dark night of the soul. So you go back to stage three to survive in your own head. So that's a selfish motive. And the whole point of stages of faith is dealing with selfishness, dealing with pride, etc. So if you're going back to meet people where they are, you can do that for a mission purpose. You can do that motivated by the gospel to meet them where they are, or you can go back for your own reasons. You can go back, maybe you're getting in trouble for some of the things you're saying or doing, and you can mitigate those to protect yourself. See, this it's very subtle, isn't it? It's
Yes.
very subtle to ask ourselves the motive questions. Why am I doing this? And I have to be honest, I think there's mixed motives some of the time. So we have so much to learn and to grow at whatever stage one may be. There are things to confront, etc. But to what we're called to do for mission is to go back to earlier stages in order to meet people where they are. Can sometimes be manipulating people to not persecute us, to to not take away a job that we like or influence that we like, et cetera, et cetera. And going back, I think we talked about 1980, where God basically said, "I want you to be real, regardless of the cost, regardless of the consequence." And so my mission and motive is to be real, but to be real with compassion, to be real not to protect my reputation, my job, or anything else, but to be real for the sake of others. That's my mission. Do I succeed in that all the time? I probably don't even know how often I fail. But ultimately, our mission is unconditional love, is to live for the sake of others. To be like Christ, who did not think being like God something he had to hang on to, but was willing to be a servant, no account, even unto death, for the sake of others. That's our model.
Mm.
Philippians 2, you can read about it. And that's the model that we follow imperfectly today, but we are seeking more and more to be like him.
Absolutely. That's the purpose for which we live, and the desire to learn should never die in our lives. I've noticed that you like movies, films. There's one that I would like to recommend to you and to our viewers. It's called The Good Lie. The Good Lie. It's an amazing story of three three siblings, actually friends and siblings that try to escape a war-torn country in Africa. I'm not going to tell you more details, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a film worth watching. Dr.
Let,
Paulien.
let me just let me just speak to that just very briefly. There are many Seventh-day Adventists, many Christians that say never, watching a drama. Uh, None of that should be part of us, and I would concur with that. That for most Christians, the danger of being twisted by media is greater than the benefit.
Mhm.
But those who want to reach secular people, those who want to reach other religions, those who want to do the kinds of ministries that make a huge difference in this world, will need to understand that world. And so some might be called to view those kinds of things in order to better understand who we're talking to, how to meet them where they are, to understand what the issues are, to understand the message of Revelation for today.
Mm.
You have to speak to today.
Mm.
Revelation in the 19th century met the anxieties of that time.
Mm.
And we still preach to those anxieties. And those who love Revelation seminars have the same kinds of anxieties as people in the 19th century did. But Gen Z, their anxieties are very different. And if in our teaching of Revelation we say nothing about the anxieties of today, it won't connect. You remember, it connected well with Muslims because their prophetic anxieties were fairly similar to Bible times and to where Adventists were a couple hundred years ago. So to speak to the anxieties today may require us to understand those anxieties, and film is one way that people philosophically wrestle with the challenges of life, film and art and things like that. So there are some whom God will call to understand those things more deeply and reach out to people in that way. So I just want to say, if there's some of those listening that just say, I would never watch a movie, I would never do this or that, I'm 100% supportive of that. Okay. But at the same time, a lot of people are, and the young people, when I was in Singapore talking to early teens, every hand went up when I asked if they'd seen certain movies. Every hand went up.
It's a
So our
reality that
kids, that's the reality that our kids are living in. And if we have nothing to say to that reality, we will lose them. So anyway, like everything else, there's a challenge:
yeah.
authenticity, compassion, how to reach people. is a challenge, but you know, it's a great adventure. And I
Yes.
look back on my life, it was hard, but it was a great adventure. And I thank God for it.
And you would not change it if you could.
Well, there's some things I would change, but I'm assuming that they happened because God knew I needed them, allowed them to happen. Yeah. Some of
Yes.
those things, I think the world would be a better place if some of those things didn't happen, but that's not my call.
Yes. Once again, Dr. Paulien, thank you so much for your time. I can only wish you to enjoy the beauty of going through the dark night of the soul, coming out of it, and being able to serve others. Your work is very much appreciated, and I wish you and your wife a beautiful, beautiful marriage together. Um, being happy with your children, grandchildren, and maybe great grandchildren. Who knows? I share into that joy of being a grandparent.
Yeah.
Until next time, hopefully we're going to do something on revelation, spiritual abuse, and other topics that you are a specialist. I know your time is limited, but I'm very grateful for what you've done for me and taking the time to share these thoughts with others and my audience. May God bless you and keep you. And until we meet again, stay safe, stay faithful, and the unconditional love stage of faith that you are in may be what you experience every moment.
Thank you so much for having me. I think it was good for me to review these things, and I appreciate the opportunity. Take care.